Jacob Fatu just unleashed an absolute storm on Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, and trust me, WWE fans are still reeling from what went down. This wasn't some random brawl or typical wrestling feud. It was personal, raw, and fueled by something deeper than just competition. After the brutal attack that left Roman Reigns sidelined with serious injuries, Fatu stepped up in a way no one expected. Driven by loyalty, family honor, and pure determination, he went after Reed and Breakker with a level of intensity that shook the WWE Universe to its core. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a clear message. You don't mess with the bloodline and get away with it. If you thought things were heating up before, buckle up, because what Jacob Fatu just did is changing the game completely. Here's the shocking reason behind this savage takeover. The night that sparked the war. Clash in Paris. To fully grasp the gravity of what followed, you need to understand the backdrop. The date was set at the iconic La Fence Arena in Paris, France. Over 20,000 passionate fans filled the arena, buzzing with excitement. Roman Reigns had just showcased why he is the undisputed tribal chief by defeating Bronson Reed in a hard-fought battle. The French crowd roared as Reigns basked in his victory, soaking in the adoration and respect he earned by overcoming months of torment from Reed. But just as Reigns lifted his arms, prideful and seemingly untouchable, the atmosphere shifted violently. What should have been a triumphant celebration turned into a nightmare. Out of nowhere, Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, two men who had concealed their true intentions behind a veil of respect, launched the most cowardly and calculated attack WWE had witnessed in years. It wasn't a fight, it was a systematic destruction, aimed not merely to win, but to permanently injure. The crowd watched in horror as Reed executed a devastating tsunami splash, crashing down on Roman with earth-shattering force. Moments later, Bron Breakker followed with explosive power moves, a perfect storm of violence designed to break the tribal chief both physically and psychologically. The arena trembled, the echo of impact resonated through the walls, and Roman's championship legacy, already monumental, was temporarily shattered. The sight of Roman Reigns being stretchered out, his body motionless and his spirit seemingly broken, remains imprinted in the minds of wrestling fans worldwide. But while the world mourned the tribal chief's fate, one man watched intently, his fury silently building, a man whose Samoan blood could not tolerate this humiliation. Jacob Fatu. The fire awakens. Jacob Fatu's rise from the shadows. This opening paragraph introduces the emotional and narrative core behind Jacob Fatu's motivation for revenge. When Michael Cole announced that Roman Reigns suffered multiple fractured ribs and would be sidelined indefinitely, it was far more than a simple injury report. In the world of wrestling, injuries are not just physical setbacks. They're often symbolic events that can shift entire storylines and power dynamics. For Jacob Fatu, a close member of Roman Reigns' bloodline faction, this announcement ignited a fierce personal response. Fatu's reaction went beyond professional concern. It touched something deeply personal and cultural. Backstage sources paint a vivid picture of Fatu as someone consumed by a burning need for justice and vengeance. His pacing through WWE corridors symbolizes his mental state, restless, angry, and calculating. He isn't reacting impulsively, but is instead methodically planning his retaliation. This pacing, described like that of a caged beast, emphasizes his animalistic drive and the seriousness of his intent. Furthermore, the paragraph highlights the arrogance of Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, who celebrated their attack on Roman with no remorse. This gloating only deepened Fatu's rage, illustrating how the attacker's disrespect compounded the injury, transforming a wrestling feud into a matter of honor. The mention of the Samoan warrior code is critical here. It grounds the story in cultural tradition, where family loyalty and honor demand retribution for wrongs against the tribe. The Bloodline, a dominant faction in WWE led by Roman, represents this cultural legacy. Fatu's actions are thus framed not as mere violence, but as fulfilling a sacred duty, a point that adds gravitas and moral weight to his quest for vengeance. Finally, the paragraph reveals Fatu's strategic mindset. He doesn't rush into chaos, but carefully studies the footage from the Paris attack. His plan is surgical, precise, and ruthless. The chilling quote, "They put Roman in the hospital for months. I'm going to make sure they understand what that feels like," encapsulates his cold, unyielding determination. It signals that Fatu sees this as destiny, a responsibility he must carry for his family's honor. The hunt begins. Precision revenge at the WWE Performance Center. The second paragraph shifts from Fatu's mental preparation to the execution of his plan. Unlike many wrestling revenge stories that focus on dramatic, chaotic fights, this one emphasizes careful planning and calculated precision. The setting, the WWE Performance Center, normally a place of training, improvement, and camaraderie, becomes the unlikely backdrop for a brutal act of vengeance. Bronson Reed, Fatu's first target, is described as unsuspecting, highlighting the element of surprise. The fact that Reed is surrounded by other wrestlers and trainers during his workout adds to the tension, as these witnesses feel a primal unease but are powerless to stop what is about to happen. This builds suspense and underlines the seriousness of Fatu's attack. The description of Fatu emerging like a force of nature and being more than just a wrestler is crucial. He embodies a Samoan warrior spirit, a lineage of fighters whose rage and honor transcend the ring. His physical attack is compared to a Pacific tsunami, emphasizing its overwhelming power and inevitability. The imagery of thunderous impact shaking the building intensifies the dramatic weight of this moment, making the violence feel elemental and unstoppable. This paragraph portrays Fatu not as a villain, but as a relentless avenger whose fury is backed by cultural honor and personal loyalty. His attack is not random or out of control. It's purposeful and devastating, setting the stage for the brutal retribution that follows. The calm before the storm, the sudden eruption of violence, and the overwhelming physicality all combine to create a powerful image of a warrior enacting justice in the most primal sense. Surgical annihilation. Making Reed. Pay here. The text dives into the details of Fatu's assault on Bronson Reed, emphasizing the methodical, personal nature of the revenge. The phrase systematic annihilation is key. It shows that Fatu isn't merely lashing out, but delivering a measured, calculated punishment designed to mirror the injuries Reed inflicted on Roman Reigns. Targeting Reed's ribs first is a symbolic and tactical move. It's a direct echo of the attack on Roman, making Reed physically experience the same pain he caused. The brutal strikes, knees, and body shots are described as surgical and sledgehammer-like, combining precision with overwhelming force. This conveys both the physical intensity and the emotional weight behind every move. Fatu's scream of, "This is for Paris," punctuates his motivation, showing that his actions are driven by vengeance, not random anger. It's a call-out to the origin of the conflict and a reminder that Fatu is acting on behalf of family loyalty and justice. Reed's cries of pain and the reaction of witnesses, who described Fatu as eerily calm, paint a picture of controlled brutality. This contrast between Fatu's composure and the violence of his actions deepens the impression of a man who is not merely angry, but on a mission. It's punishment with a purpose, demonstrating that Fatu's vengeance is as much psychological as physical. The paragraph also highlights the respect and fear Fatu commands. Other wrestlers try to intervene, but retreat after seeing his enraged eyes, underscoring that this is family business. This phrase encapsulates the cultural and emotional stakes. This isn't just a fight between wrestlers. It's a sacred duty to protect and avenge one's family. The chilling final line where Fatu stands over Reed and delivers his message cements the moment as a turning point. The use of blood and broken bones as a language reinforces the brutal seriousness of this justice, leaving no doubt that Fatu's vengeance is complete and his warning unmistakable. The final target, Bron Breaker's Dark Knight. This paragraph transitions to Fatu's next target, Bron Breaker, expanding the scope of the revenge and adding a new layer of suspense. With Bronson Reed incapacitated, Fatu's mission is only half done, emphasizing that his quest for justice is thorough and relentless. The description of Fatu tracking Breaker for hours reveals his patience and strategic mindset. Unlike impulsive revenge stories, this is a calculated hunt, showing Fatu's commitment and the seriousness of the Bloodline's code. Breaker's sense of false security, believing he's untouchable, adds dramatic tension to the scene. The setting, a dimly lit parking garage, creates a dark, cinematic atmosphere. The echoing footsteps symbolize impending doom, and the palpable fear on Breaker's face highlights the severity of the situation. This isn't a typical wrestling match, it's a moment of reckoning, where real consequences await. Fatu's appearance, bloodied, torn clothes, and fiery eyes, reinforces his warrior image and the physical toll his mission has taken. His cold, grave words, "You helped put my tribal chief in the hospital for months. Now you answer to the Bloodline," serve as a stark warning. The phrase, "answer to the Bloodline," invokes the deep cultural and familial ties at the heart of this story, framing the violence as more than just retaliation. It's an assertion of tribal authority and protection. The comparison of these words to a death sentence amplifies the gravity of the confrontation, setting the stage for the savage assault that follows. An unleashing of ancient fury. The final paragraph describes the climactic violence of Fatu's attack on Bron Breaker, emphasizing its ferocity and cultural significance. The text highlights that Fatu's techniques go beyond conventional wrestling moves. They are rooted in ancient Pacific Island warrior traditions. This gives his assault a primal, almost mythic quality, distinguishing it from typical wrestling conflicts. The initial super kicks are described as powerful enough to cause chaos beyond the fight itself, with car alarms blaring and a symphony of destruction in the parking garage. This imagery illustrates the sheer force of Fatu's attack and the disruption it causes in the environment. The repeated Samoan drops on the concrete floor symbolize not just physical domination, but a message of unyielding strength and resolve. The description of the building's foundation shaking adds to the epic scale of the attack. Fatu's shouted reasons for the attack personalize the violence and tie it directly back to Roman Reigns' suffering and the dishonor brought to the Bloodline. This makes the assault a form of ritualistic justice meant to restore honor and balance. The final blow, a Samoan spike, renders Breaker unconscious, bringing the assault to a dramatic, decisive end. Fatu standing over Breaker and declaring, "The Bloodline remembers. The Bloodline avenges. The Bloodline never forgives," reinforces the deep-seated loyalty and vengeance that define the Bloodline faction's identity. This closing statement leaves no doubt that the Bloodline's strength lies in family unity and retribution, sending a warning to anyone who dares threaten them in the future. The aftermath, poetic justice and family honor. When Bronson Reed and Bron Breaker were loaded into ambulances following Jacob Fatu's brutal retaliation, it marked a powerful moment of poetic justice within WWE's dramatic world. These two men, who had once inflicted serious injury on Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, now found themselves paying the price in kind. This act was not simply retribution, but a profound message. The Bloodline protects its own, no matter the personal cost or consequences. It demonstrated that the family's loyalty and unity transcend the typical rivalries and politics seen in wrestling. Jacob Fatu's retaliation was rapid and merciless, signaling that any attack on a Bloodline member would be met with overwhelming force. This wasn't random violence born from anger. It was a calculated and definitive statement that the Bloodline stands as an unbreakable force, and harm to one is harm to all. It served to remind everyone watching that Roman's long-term injury wasn't just a physical setback. It was an attack on the entire legacy and heritage of the Bloodline. But this was not just about revenge or inflicting equal pain. It was rooted deeply in family honor and legacy. For the Samoan bloodline, protecting the family name and standing up for kin is a sacred duty. The bloodline's history is steeped in traditions of respect, loyalty, and vengeance when those bonds are broken. Jacob Fatu's actions ensured that Roman's sacrifice and the pain endured would be neither forgotten nor dismissed. The bloodline's story is about resilience, and this violent response underscored their commitment to that resilience. Backstage, other members of the bloodline openly supported Fatu's actions, signaling unity and collective approval. Solo Sikoa's words encapsulated the group's shared sentiment: when you harm one of their own, you face the full force of Samoan justice. Fatu's willingness to put himself on the line elevated him from being just an enforcer or ally to a warrior brother, a guardian of the family's honor, willing to risk his career to ensure justice. His actions cemented a legacy not only within the storyline, but in the hearts of fans who deeply respect loyalty and family values. WWE management in crisis. Jacob Fatu's bold and violent retaliation has thrust WWE management into an unprecedented and complex crisis. Wrestling companies typically thrive on scripted storylines and controlled rivalries, but Fatu's actions blur the lines between kayfabe and real-life consequences, creating a dilemma that's difficult to navigate. On one hand, WWE executives have a duty to maintain order and safety within their roster, punishing actions that cross into real violence. On the other, millions of fans applaud Fatu's loyalty and see his retaliation as justified, almost heroic, which complicates any decision about disciplinary action. Emergency meetings behind closed doors stretched late into the night as WWE brass tried to reconcile these conflicting pressures. While it's clear that Fatu's attack on Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker violates company rules, the emotional and cultural context complicates matters. The fact that Fatu was defending a family member who was hospitalized blurs the ethical lines. WWE prides itself on storytelling, but struggles when the storylines echo real familial and cultural values so powerfully that fans deeply connect with them. Triple H, as WWE's chief content officer, finds himself in a particularly difficult position. Known for his background as a wrestler who understands loyalty and brotherhood in wrestling, he reportedly sympathizes privately with Fatu's motivations. But professionally, he must consider the ramifications of either punishing or excusing Fatu's actions. Punishing him risks alienating fans who view the bloodline as a sacred entity, and Fatu's actions as righteous. Meanwhile, letting him off without consequences risks setting a dangerous precedent, potentially encouraging real violence among wrestlers who might take justice into their own hands. WWE's biggest concern is maintaining a safe, professional environment while keeping their passionate fan base engaged. Some within the company argue that Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker brought this on themselves. Their attack crossed lines that made retaliation inevitable. This internal debate highlights how wrestling, while scripted entertainment, often wrestles with real human emotions and cultural values, making management's job exceptionally difficult. The legacy of vengeance. Jacob Fatu's fierce and calculated retaliation has fundamentally rewritten the unwritten rules of WWE's backstage and on-screen world. This act transcended typical wrestling storylines, delivering a sobering lesson to Bronson Reed, Bron Breakker, and anyone else who might think to threaten Roman Reigns or the bloodline. Hospitalizing the tribal chief wasn't merely a physical assault on one man. It was an affront to an entire family steeped in warrior tradition. Fatu's response awakened the bloodline's collective fury, showcasing that when one member is harmed, the whole family rises to defend and avenge. This response has secured Fatu's reputation as WWE's most dangerous protector. Unlike a typical enforcer or ally, Fatu embodies the role of a warrior brother whose loyalty runs deeper than career ambitions or scripted rivalries. His readiness to dismantle two prominent wrestlers for harming his family sends a chilling and unmistakable message. Attacking the bloodline will come at an unbearable cost. This legacy of vengeance doesn't just protect Roman Reigns, but fortifies the bloodline's mythos within WWE lore. Regardless of opinions on his methods, the loyalty Jacob Fatu demonstrated cannot be denied or underestimated. In Samoan culture, family means everything. A bond so strong, it demands fierce protection and uncompromising justice when wronged. Fatu's actions illustrate this cultural principle, adding authentic depth to his character and the bloodline's narrative. While Roman Reigns remains sidelined long-term due to his injuries, he can rest assured that his legacy and place within the WWE are fiercely defended. Fatu's brutal justice acts as a shield for Roman's absence, delivering retribution for every lost opportunity, every day of suffering, and every moment the tribal chief is forced away from the spotlight. This saga reminds fans and wrestlers alike that the bloodline's strength lies not only in physical dominance, but in the unyielding bonds of family honor and loyalty.